One. Hi, everyone. I'm Addison Price, member of our Kansas City Conscious Capitalism local chapter. And once again, this is Casual Conversations with Conscious Leaders. And we are here to be a resource for you, to have these conversations, to open up dialogue on topics and areas of the world where we think leaders and being conscious are important, and to just shed light on what we're doing here on Kansas City. Today, our guest is Doug Waltman, a friend of mine, been a part of our local chapter from the beginning, so he knows quite a bit, and really looking forward to diving into this. Doug, welcome.
Addison, thank you. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well, having a good night.
Good, me too.
Well, let's tell our audience a little bit about who you are and kind of what you've done the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's been really my career's been in two distinct chapters. One, I've lived in Kansas City since 1983, so I'll date myself a little bit. Had a 25-year corporate career, various organizations, Federal Reserve Bank, Westlake Ace Hardware. And my last two corporate stops, I was on the senior management teams at H&R Block and then also at Applebee's. And then 12 years ago, I decided to hang up my corporate cleats and started my own leadership development consulting practice. So I've been doing that work for the last 12 years and have so enjoyed also having the opportunity to be part of the conscious capitalism effort here in Kansas City. It just so fits with my beliefs around leadership and what leadership needs to be in today's world.
That's great. Well, let's talk a little bit about, some of those beliefs, some of those leadership development traits or programs that you've led. So where, I guess, in your experience from the consulting side or the corporate side, that you want to share as leaders are evolving and growing in a corporate organization? What should they be doing? What are some of the leadership development traits that you've touched on and grown in other leaders?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one thing I would say is leadership development. I'm not exactly sure how this happened. It's been my passion and my focus in my entire career. And I remember even in my undergraduate studies at Mizzou, taking these management classes and hearing about management and leadership and going, it interests me. And then when I took my first, big person job out of college, one of the things that I quickly noticed inside the organization is what a difference leaders make. So it was like you saw some leaders and they would get great results. Their team members were engaged. They kept their talent. And then unfortunately, you have leaders at the other end of the spectrum that maybe struggled with results. They struggled with their team. It seemed like they were always hiring replacement folks. And so it just deepened my curiosity around why do some leaders have the kind of positive impact they do and other leaders struggle? And ultimately, that really got me focused on then how do you develop leaders, even really good leaders that are getting good results? How do you develop them to take on more and be even more effective? And then the leaders that are struggling a bit, how do you grow and develop them? And one of the things, this would have been back in the 1980s, that was just absolutely blowing up in terms of leadership development was the onslaught of the one-day public seminars. I don't know, Addison, if you've ever attended a one-day public seminar.
I have. I'm guilty.
Yeah. Well, and there's nothing to be guilty about it. There's a role for it. In fact, I used to facilitate one-day seminars around the United States. And a lot of people don't know this, but Kansas City was really the hub of public seminar companies back in the 80s. A lot of the big public seminar companies had their start here in Kansas City. But here's the basic premise, and organizations use this as their structure of development for years and years and years. And it is, if you can imagine, we're going to develop this leader. Oh, here is a seminar for them to go to. In the seminar, they're going to learn the 15 things that great leaders do. And there'll be all kinds of PowerPoint slides and a workbook. And you'll leave that seminar knowing those 15 things that a leader needs to do. And then it's like, so just do that and you'll be a great leader. And so many organizations would say, we have a successful leadership development program because we've sent X number of people to X number of programs and they're educated about leadership. And so what I began to discover during my career and really believe is true, and there's a lot of research to back this up, that's not how human beings grow and develop. It's not just about education. So Addison, for example, how many people are walking around today that aren't educated and know that if you eat well, you exercise, you get sleep, that you'll have a much healthier lifestyle? Very few people that would be new news to. Then how do you account for the fact that we have today the least healthy adult population we've ever had in the United States? It's not because people don't know what's missing. And for leaders, especially leaders that struggle, it's not that they don't know what to do, it's how do they do it? And so my career has really been focused challenging the old ways of developing leaders. How do people really learn and grow and develop, and just kind of turning it upside down?
I like that. So to keep with that, you mentioned, leaders that maybe it just comes really natural, performance is there, team is growing, there's culture. But then there's also people, I think every person can be a leader and can develop. But our theme this year that we've kind of taken on is resilience. Yeah. So if you're struggling, if you're not seeing performance, if the team morale and culture is not there, it's great to learn and be educated, but how are we also manifesting and putting this into practicality, but you're struggling and you really want to lean in on that resilience to keep going because your belief or the person that you are or the people that you're around or the organization that you're with, you want it to survive. You want it to do well. What do you have to kind of suggest or talk about there?
Well, Addison, that's a great question and a great insight. And so the word that I'll put out there right now, and then I'm going to loop back to it, is a word that we use an awful lot in conscious capitalism, and especially the tenet of conscious leadership. And that is self-awareness. It's understanding the impact that I'm having on individuals. And so to me, and a really important part of the leadership development journey for folks is developing that self-awareness. And that can be really uncomfortable, right? It's the leader that has just participated in a 360 assessment, getting feedback from all of those around them, and they even assess themselves. It takes courage to me to be in that process and then face those results and understand where are my opportunities to develop. And so part of what I believe to be true about the development of leaders inside organizations, and I use this approach a lot in the coaching that I do with leaders, is I'm going to paint this mental image of the development cycle. And it is truly a cycle that feeds on each other. So you just got to jump in. And the place we're going to jump in, the first place is the experience that people have. So one of the questions I've asked literally hundreds of leaders is to tell me about a time as you look back on your life when, looking back on it, you know that you really grew and developed as a leader, as frankly as a human being. And what was going on for you then that caused that development? And Addison, it's so interesting to me because I get all these stories being told, and I would say probably 70 to 80% of the stories that are told about experiences where people developed aren't happy ending stories. They're stories of adversity. They're stories of maybe being given a real challenging project at work that was over your head. You weren't ready for it. You bumped your head. You made mistakes. It can be the loss of a loved one or a relationship. It could be going through a divorce. And the struggles that people talk about that have been core to their development are so strong. And that doesn't mean there aren't some positive stories that are there as well. But to me, it's very telling that that's how we grow and develop as individuals, are the experiences, that we have. Now, so I will tell you, when I first started asking this question, one things, I've only had one person in all the years I've asked that question, only one person ever tell me, Addison, well, one of the things that just really changed it for me was that leadership development program that I went to. I mean, it was life changing. So, you talk about hurting to your core, someone that's done that in their whole life, but I get it. And so it's our culmination of experiences in life that are foundational to our development. But here is the next step. And this is going back to what I mentioned before about conscious leadership and reflection and awareness. It's not just enough to have experiences, but it's also the ability to process and reflect and make sense out of the experience. So for example, Addison, I don't know about you, but one of the things about this pandemic that's absolutely true for me and true for people that I coach and just friends and family that I talk to is this pandemic for many of us has created that space and that opportunity and that need to be in reflection on their life.
Mm-hmm.
And what that looks like is, how's this impacting me? What's the struggle for me in this pandemic? On the other hand, I hear people talking about, here's what I'm really enjoying about this new lifestyle, a way of working, a way of being with my family. It's shifted priorities. So there's a lot of that going on for folks. I believe when the stories are written about these pandemic times, a part of that story will be the journeys that it took people on that literally changed the trajectory of their life, whether it be the job they're in, their relationship to friends and family. It's all sitting out there. So one of the suggestions that I would have for folks in this reflection is, first of all, self-reflection. And I don't know about you, Addison, but I think one of the toughest conversations to ever have is the one with yourself.
It is.
Where you just have to be very candid with yourself. The other part of that equation that I really promote to leaders is getting feedback from others. And so, for example, let's say that you facilitated a meeting with your team this morning, and conscious leaders, what's really common for them to do is some moment after that meeting, even if it's 30 seconds, to think about, what was that experience in the meeting today? One, did we achieve what we hoped to? But two, how did I positively contribute to that meeting today? How did I show up? What leadership behaviors did I use? Then the other thing too is, when did I get in the way? When did my leadership style and behavior in that meeting today maybe shut the meeting down or prevent ideas from being heard? How could I have shown up more effectively? And then if you really want to get courageous, talk to a few people who are in the meeting and just go to them and say, a little feedback time here. What was your impression of what happened today? Where did I, as the leader of that meeting, contribute to the success, and where did I get in the way? And certainly there's got to be trust in that relationship and openness. But the third part of the cycle, so experience, reflection, processing, then leads to action. That's the so what. So something like a meeting, if there's one thing I learned from it, it's like, next time I'm in a meeting, if I do X a bit differently, it's predictable, I'll see a better result. And so I then carry that forward to the next experience. So that's that rotating cycle: experience, reflection, move to action, bringing to the next experience. And one of the things I find about highly effective leaders, that's the world they live in. That world of just continually getting better, looking at themselves, having conversations with others, and getting that feedback. So I don't know if that makes sense or not, but it's this idea that we just don't go from straight shots to here learning about something. Life has a way of giving us more experiences than what we know what to do with. It's being very intentional, purposeful about leaning into those experiences and understanding how that's helping me grow and develop.
That makes great sense. And I think if I could, I'll be on the stand of a little bit of vulnerability. I'll give two examples to that. So one of those being self-aware and just how you address and ask your peers or teammates how you're doing. I had a manager that he'd never say good morning. He'd
Yeah.
just come in and say, what are we working on? Let's get down to business, or let's take care of this reports or these spreadsheets, or, are we hitting these deadlines? And over time, it's just like, where's the greeting? Good morning. How are you doing? Taking that self-awareness to just greet someone before asking of something, or, calling to it. And another example would be of myself is large organization is growing. I want to be a part of it. I'm super passionate. I write a job description, get the job. Now I think I'm entitled because, I've created this thing and I'm part of this big corporation growing over 3 months. And my role in that is director of community outreach. I never led a team. How am I going to lead the community if I hadn't led a team? But I have a title that says I should be doing these things, right? And I found myself just stumbling over myself because I was not self-aware of why was I doing this? It was ego. I wanted to be a part of something big. I wanted myself to be big. What was really happening in my life? My girlfriend had broke up with me. I had moved back home from college and I was living with my parents. And so there's all these other personal things that were happening that I'm carrying into the professional world, trying to be a leader, trying to do all the forcing these things. And really it wasn't there. Now I look at myself, and you talk about experiences and journeys that life will give you. I look at all of that. I am, so thankful for the grace that the other leaders gave me and just said, young gun, get your strides. We know you have good intentions, but at the same time, lose some of that self in what you're doing. So I walk away from that experience and going, maybe take myself a little less serious, but never not take what you do serious and how you can contribute as a leader to the organization.
Well, so Addison, thanks for sharing those stories and being vulnerable around that. So if I could, just the story you just told. So you could have gained awareness around all the things you just said. Don't make it about you, and you just articulate that beautifully. So I suppose you could have gone to a quote program that told you good leaders don't take themselves too seriously. They don't check. So Addison, just don't do that. My suspicion is fundamental and core to who you are as a person today is that you had that experience in your life. And it's a story that you carry with you. It will always be a part of you, that experience. And my guess is, if you had the opportunity to share how many times that experience and what you learned for it has then showed up in other situations in your life where you just, maybe it wasn't conscious, but there was this voice in the back of the head that was like, yeah, don't be that that young buck all those years ago.
Yep.
And that's development, that's growth, that's real and meaningful and lasting.
Okay, one other thing I want to talk about within the development model, and you touched on it, is the reflection. Yes. So how are we marrying or, getting these two things of resilience and reflection? Where do those have synergy? Because I believe they do. Mm-hmm. So share a little bit. Again, resilience is our theme here in Kansas City. And again, we just want to kind of push forward in 2020 and into 2021. But at the same time, there's reflection needed is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah, it's a great question and a really important one. So what we know about folks with high resilience is it's not that they go out of their way not to have difficult experiences in their life. Those are unavoidable. It's their response and their relationship to that experience that's important. So in the reflection process, And even something as simple as the meeting example that I gave before. Let's say you walk away from a meeting feeling defeated. We didn't achieve our objectives today. Half the folks didn't say anything at all in that meeting. Energy was low in the meeting. It would be just really easy to go, okay, those meetings are a waste of time. Let's stop doing those meetings. People don't care about them. Resilience then, and the part of the reflection is to, one, ground yourself again is what is the purpose and the reason for having that meeting? When the meeting is done well, how does it benefit the people in the room and the organization? So you reconnect yourself to that why, the purpose. And then it's the process of, okay, giving yourself grace and saying, here are two things that the next time I could do better, that I could improve on, that will get us closer to realizing the purpose of that. Now, I will tell you, let's take an even bigger picture. These stories that I mentioned at the beginning of our conversation, life stories that people would share about their development, and they're big stuff. It's not a single meeting. It is an illness they got through, the loss of a loved one, maybe getting fired from a job. I mean, the big stuff that happens in life. What I know is when you're in the middle of that, it's really hard to take the perspective of, oh, what a wonderful development opportunity the world just gave me. So I don't want to come across as saying, even in the midst of that, put on the cheery face and put the spin on it. But figure out a way that's meaningful to you to give yourself grace and permission just to take it in and understand there is a way forward. And Madison, I don't know about you, but it's my personal experience in working with folks, and this is a big part of resilience, is to have practices that you use to help you do that, whether it be meditation, whether it be journaling. I will share with you my biggest resilience thing that I do is long distance running. It's
love
my
it.
dream.
Yeah.
And nothing, I can't tell you how many times I'm out running for, even if it's just 30 minutes or an hour, whatever it is, I intentionally use that time to do the reflection and to take it in. And frankly, for me, being out in nature also connects me to the bigger world and the universe and what's going on. But I can't tell you how many times I have started in a not good place about something that's going on for me, and frankly, something I want to give up on. And by the time I get home after that run, I've processed it. And I just have it within me. Okay, here's that next step. And maybe if you're running, a next step is a good analogy of how to move forward. And so I don't know if that helps or not. It's my encouragement to folks is it's natural to feel down. It's natural to feel like there's no hope or there's not a way forward. But if we can discipline ourselves to take on that practice ourselves, it can make a world of difference. And one other thing I'll just mention is have people in your life that can support you with that. This isn't just about carrying that journey by yourself. And I'll go back to the pandemic. That's what concerns me a lot. Or there's a lot of folks out there hurting and they're alone. And so develop those relationships where you can talk about what you're experiencing, where you're bumping your head, where you're struggling, can also really help not only with our own resilience, but then help the other person with that. It's just a wonderful gift to give somebody else.
Yeah, I'm glad you touched on the point of balancing the mental side of things and even the physical side of things. And I've been around leaders that will come into the office and they're physically there, they're high performing, but then I wonder, what else to life are they balancing? And when you kind of described, going for a run, you're still carrying everything from the day with you, but you're balancing your mental and almost exuding it out through your physical. And when doing that, there's a release of some of this. There's some of this freedom and this unbearing that, I am thinking this through. But at the same time, you're physically building your body back up. You're getting stronger. And I'm a big runner as well, too, because of that component where I can almost escape but still stay conscious to whatever I'm dealing with or wanting to grow in. And when I get done with that run, I feel exhausted. So there's a point of, hitting that, and I got to stay resilient. If I have a goal of 2 miles and at 1.5 miles, I don't have my second wind, you better believe I ended that run going, man, you got some resilience in you, Addison. You finished it strong.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's that runner's high that that we runners talk about. But you don't need to, if running's not your thing, what is your thing? What is a way to
journaling, maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been great. Any other last little bit of takeaways or, things to think about? I know that we talked on quite a bit here. Been a great conversation, but want to give you the floor again to throw another takeaway out there or things that other leaders should be thinking about.
Maybe 2 things, and it's really one thing. It's kind of they go together. One of the things that, as I'm at the later stages of my career, I'm really excited, and it's one of the reasons I'm involved with the Conscious Capitalism here in Kansas City, that next generation of leadership that's going to be around. And so I have a lot of conversations with younger leaders, and one of the things that I encourage them to do is embrace the experiences that they're having right now, because all of it is fundamental to help create the story that you're going to live down the road. Like when I look at my life and my young leadership years, there were times at the moment I thought this isn't very meaningful, or I could be doing more. But now that I look back on it, it was the culmination of all those experiences and my growth and development that happened to set the stage for what I achieved later in my career. Just as what I'm doing today is setting the stage for the story that I'm going to tell 5 or 10 years from now. So I am so excited about the generation of leaders that are going to be leading organizations going forward. And those seem to be a lot of the younger leaders that are attracted to our chapter here in Kansas City. So I would encourage them to just lean heavily into the experiences that they have. And the part 2 of that is be courageous in the experiences that you take on. And just know that bumping your head, stumbling, not having all the answers is what it takes to grow and develop as a person. And then part 2 for my generation that are exiting organizations is I believe you have an obligation to provide those young leaders those opportunities, because I think there's a different mindset around what leadership means inside an organization and our obligation to the people in our organization. And unfortunately, I think some of I'm going to call it the old school mentality around leadership has not served us well. And I think it's why conscious capitalism, there's so much energy around the world, frankly, around conscious capitalism, is this understanding that we need and have to lead differently and better to engage folks. So Addison, I'm just very optimistic about this next generation of leadership that's coming our way. I want to be encouraging to them. And I also want to encourage organizations to give your young leaders a chance to support them, develop them, give them the space to grow into the really capable human beings that I know they can be.
Yeah, that's so good. I'm happy that we're kind of closing on that, because that's really what we want to do here in Kansas City, and why we're doing this is to be a resource and a soundboard, and then to share again our experiences, what we've learned. But it goes back to resilience, and whether you're at your stage, my stage, wherever, keeping that resilience to keep going, lose yourself a little bit, have the awareness of what you're learning and going through. Because I love what you just said. You're still setting the stage for year 5 and 10, and I can do the same thing, and everyone else around us. So I love having these casual conversations with conscious leaders. Doug, our friendship and what we're doing here in Kansas City, it feels really, really good. But to everyone else out there, again, we are wanting to be a resource to you guys. We are enjoying these. We would love feedback on topics or suggestions on what we need to talk about, or other leaders. So if there's a leader in Indianapolis that would fit this, great. We would love to host them on here and keep this going. Once again, Doug, it's always been a pleasure. Thank you again for your insights and everything that you're doing.
Thank you, Addison. It's been great being with you.
All right. Till next time. Take care, everyone.